In the precious name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilwoman English. Please stand. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Next item on the agenda is item 4, which is the approval of the minutes. Any additions, deletions, or changes to the minutes from the special call meeting for July 12th, 2022?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Has moved properly second. Any discussion? You recognize Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if it makes any difference based on the order that the minutes are here, but you may recall at the last meeting we covered items, the consent items 14A through C. Actually, maybe it was the third reading items, I'm sorry. And after the third reading items, we had pulled 14B, which was the land development open space design standards, and we approved it after third reading items. But it's in position here as a consent item. And the reason for approving it then was so that it would come after the 2021 Land Development Code approval and actually be part of those considerations. So I just want to point that out. I don't know if it makes any difference that it appears in the original slot here or not.
So noted, Mr. Malinowski. Mr. Wright, you recognized?
Yes, I just wanted to say that as far as for the record, it doesn't make a difference, but it's reflected in the minutes.
Okay.
Recognize Mr. Malinowski.
And also, Mr. Chair, I was discussing this some with Attorney Wright earlier. And when it comes to, this is on page 11 of our agenda, where halfway down the page where it says, Mr. Wright responded that the text was approved on November 16th, 2022. The only thing that has not become effective are the maps. But that's not totally correct because the Planning Commission is discussing not only the maps, but additional text changes that were put before them based on a lot of resident and landowner input that we got. So I don't think it's accurate. It's somewhat confusing and actually misleading to let people think the only thing not effective are the maps. I realize that the 2005 Land Development Code is there, but there's also some changes coming about with redoing some of these zoning classifications, redoing a lot of these zoning classifications that were changed and now being changed around again. So I want to make sure that that's clear for everyone.
Mr. Wright, you recognized?
Yes, well, in November, the text was adopted, but until the maps are completed, there can be some adjustments to the text as well.
Thank you, sir.
Any additions, deletions, or changes to the minutes? Okay. Any further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston. Yes. Teresia. Joe Walker.
Yes.
Paul Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 5, which is adoption of the agenda. Any additions, deletions, or changes?
Mr. Chair.
You recognize Mr. Pugh?
Chair, I would like for us to amend the agenda to add hospitality tax for District 5.
See where that could go on the agenda where it wouldn't be confusing or have to move around too much. What if we were to list that as item, can we list that as item, I guess, 16 and list executive session as 17 and motion period is 18 and so on? Can we just do it that way? Okay.
Mr. Chair.
You recognize Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you. Is it possible to make that a? Man, go ahead.
But I'm listening to Mr. Malinowski.
No, I was going to say 15C, but I noticed that's part of the Rules and Appointments Committee,
Right.
so we can't do it.
Okay.
Second.
All right. It's moved to properly second. Any additional discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride. Livingston. Joe Walker,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
And for the record, that was a motion to amend to adopt the agenda as amended. Next item on the agenda is item 6, which is the report of the county attorney for executive session items. Mr. Wright, I don't see any items on for executive session, but you are recognized.
That's correct. There are no items for executive sessions tonight.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 7, which is citizens input. This is for items on the agenda not requiring a public hearing. Madam Vice Chair, we have anyone signed up to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have several individuals signed up to speak this evening. I will go through the list and call your name. When I call your name, I ask that you come forward to either mic or podium that is up at the front. State your first and last name as well as your address, and each individual person will be given 2 minutes to speak. First up is Robert Reese.
Madam Vice Chair, before Mr. Reese comes down, do we have, you say several people signed up to speak? Does that number exceed 15?
No, sir.
Okay.
We have total 11. Yes, sir.
So my name is Robert Reese. I live at 204 Sonoma Drive. That's in Hopkins, South Carolina. And this is, I am rising to speak in opposition of something that I heard last session. And that was that the consideration was about process. And I'm here to say that I think process should not go over people. And we, the people, are here to say that we want special consideration. And I'm really sort of directing my comments at the representatives from Lower Richland, because often we're asking the people to come to this chamber and you're asking the people for votes. And we're here to say we want the people to be heard and not the process to be placed over people. And I'm here to give 3 examples of why process shouldn't be placed over people. Because we've had this opportunity before to be a part of the process. And the last time I put something in for the process, we didn't even hear anything back from you. And then the second thing that happened when we put something in for the process, then we were expected to fund all of the project that we had up front without the county putting any resources in. And then thirdly, after we did get accepted for approval, then it took forever for the county to process the payments for us to get the monies back. The process is broken. And for you to say here on this council that process matters more than people, I think you got it all backwards. The people matter more. And the issue at hand, particularly tonight that we're talking about, is something that is so time consuming or time sensitive that we can't wait on a process that might take you 3 or 4 months to get the process in place, for the grants to go through, for them to be approved. You know how much could happen in a 3 or 4 month period? We're asking you to not take process to be more important than people. And I'm asking you to remember the fact that you came to the people in order for you to get here in these positions. And now the people are here asking you to put us first.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Next, we have Thomas Williams. Thomas Williams.
Here today about the initiative.
I'm sorry, if you would start off with your first and last name and then provide your address, please. You have 2 minutes.
Thomas Williams, 1528 Willow Drive, Columbus, South Carolina, 29223. I'm here today to talk about the program as far as like kids' summer programs. The kids need something to do this summer. When they bored, they result in violence. So really just trying to get them something to do. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next is Kailyn Jones, and I apologize if I got that wrong. Kailyn Jones. All right, sweetie, if you would, can you reach the mic? You have an adult with you that can help you? You got it?
My name is Kailyn Jones, and I live at Gingerwood Way. And I am here to talk about summer camp. We have nothing to do here, and we could have some more of teaching and learning. And as far as I know, I love school. And almost all the kids around here, they love school too. And we'd like to get away from all violence. And we like to have fun. That's all I have to say.
Next is, and again, I apologize if I get this wrong, Linda Marshall. Maxwell, I apologize.
Hi, my name is Linda Maxwell. I live at 511 Alcott Drive. Today, for me to stand here before the council board to let y'all know that it's just not enough refunds, and the people that we need to get in contact with to make things much better with these children. In order to stop this violence, they need to have something positive to do. But if we don't have the funds to do that, who do we need to turn to? Because y'all will come to us if you want votes. So why can't we come to y'all to get the resources to help take care of these situations? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next is Lavon Baker. Lavon Baker. Will state your first and last name and your address, and you have 2 minutes.
Lavon Baker, 309 Peppercorn Lane, Columbia, South Carolina. I'm here to say, I guess the people is more important than the process. And this is an emergency we're in right now, trying to save lives. Just a couple of months ago, Leon Light got on public TV and said we was in an emergency. We, as the Gang and Peace, came together a couple of months ago. We walk around neighborhoods after neighborhoods trying to stop the violence. And we just need some extra resources to help to get the kids some activities to do. We here trying to do what we could do. We come to ask y'all for y'all part to do what y'all can do. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Next is Alonzo Kansader. I apologize. If you would state your first and last name and your address, you have 2 minutes.
Alonzo Kansader, 822 Swagger Road, Blythewood, South Carolina. And I come on behalf of Gangs and Peace and just want to talk about people are more important in the process. Why? Because as we wait on the process, the children and parents still have a need. Children are lacking resources. Children are still battling with which path to take in life, which they don't have people that they can look up to that look like them and speak their language. And last but not least, lives are at risk. The more we wait on the process, people are dying every day. The violence will go up. So we're just here on behalf of Gangs and Peace to ask that, like my brother said, y'all do y'all part while we do our part, because it takes a village to raise a child. And I believe that all of us is a part of the village.
Thank you. Next, I just have Jay. Jay, if you would state your first and last name, as well as your address, and you have 2 minutes, please.
I'm Jay Brown, 18 Berry Hill Road, Columbia, South Carolina. I'm come here on the behalf of Gangs and Peace, myself. And when we talk about state of an emergency, basically in so many words, a state of emergency is basically giving up the regular protocol to handle a dire situation with a swift response. When it comes to people's lives, that's a dire need. And we're just at a point in society, when it comes to helping these youth, we don't have time to sit here and try to be politically correct while people out here are dying and families are being affected and things like that. You know, with a lot of you guys reflecting the way I look, I'm sure at one point y'all said, you know, to yourselves, when you look at some of the statistics, what are some of these young brothers gonna wake up and get it together? Well, good afternoon, because a lot of us realize it's gonna take people that look like us to help with some of the problems. Now, can we eliminate every single problem? No. But at the same time, it's going to take people that reflect, that look like us, that a lot of these younger people will gravitate toward more too. That's why we would need funding to provide resources, because we know in any society, any color, when it comes to resources, that's what eliminates crime or whatever. So when you go into these neighborhoods of kids who don't look like me, and there's all kind of things for them to do and get engaged in, and then you got, you know, people in other communities, all they have is a basketball goal. That's all I had to say for this evening.
Thank you. Next is Torian Sims.
How you doing? My name is Torian Sims. I'm at 537 Lake Carolina Drive. My statement is pretty much to whomever against the proposal, against the grant. My thing is, do we have to sit around and wait till it happened to one of your children to understand that it's a real emergency? Like, I don't know if y'all watch the news every day, but I watch the news constantly. And what I seen months ago, 3 months ago, whatever, was 16-year-olds killing 16-year-olds, 13-year-olds killing 13-year-olds, cops killing kids. We ain't finding no justice for it. Me and my brothers came together and we told each other, man, it's sad right now. You know, growing up, we didn't have social media, so everything didn't transport so fast. But when we did get into trouble, it was fights. We went home, we came back to talk about it, live to see another day. Right now with these kids, it's ridiculous. We came together, stopped what we doing, decided to put our differences to the side to support these kids, to make sure they don't come up the way we did. Sitting in prison, getting shot, it ain't a good feeling, but it's something that we had to go through. So we asking y'all to please help us with these funds so that these kids can have something to do. In the neighborhoods growing up, we didn't have nothing to do. So what we did, we looked up to drug dealers, gang members. That's how we became that. So our thing is, we here today as a whole. We don't look at separations, Crips, blood, folks, none of that. We gang in peace, and we asking that y'all please help us out to help these kids out. That's all I got to say.
Next is, again, I apologize, Loretta Francis.
Good afternoon. My name is Lolita Frazier. My address is 220 Springtree Drive, Columbia, South Carolina. I stand today for my son, Jordan Lalo Stiff, who was murdered in 2016, for my niece, Jocelyn Frazier, who was murdered in 2019, and for my nephew, Dylan Edmonds, who was murdered in 2020. I've had to advocate for myself for the past 6 years. And I'm supporting this program because the word gang alone means working together. And so if they're working together in peace, this is going to be something that's going to heal these kids. These kids aren't killers. They aren't murderers. They are hurt. They are suffering. They are dealing with unhealed trauma. This may not stop the problem right now, but it's going to get them one step closer. We always focus on hurt people hurting people, but here's a situation where healed people are healing people. Like I said, this couldn't save my son, but it might could save your son, your friend's son, your nephew. Like, this is for real. Every day I wake up and I got to make a decision. Am I going to walk in this pain or strut through it? And these programs like this has been my support. And so these resources are needed. It's needed, it's money. It's no equivalent to a life. And we give money for many things. What's more important than our sons and our daughters? And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next is Jahari Smith.
All right, how y'all doing? My name is Jahari Smith.
All right.
All right. Basically,
could you state your address, please? You have 2 minutes.
250 Crossbow Drive, Columbia, South Carolina, 29212. All right. Honestly, she just shifted my energy a little bit. I came with something I wanted to focus on, but I kind of felt her. And when I hear something like that, like I'm a man, it kind of made me want to do something, you know? So I'm getting my thoughts together. But anyway, being also an advocate and an ambassador with Gangs and Peace movement, you know, I came out here to say basically, I want to focus in a little bit on like my story, and I'm gonna keep it in a 2-minute time frame. But anyway, being someone who actually, you know, experienced going to prison from poor decision making, being someone who actually experienced it right now, my little homeboys who I get involved with trying to mentor to push in a different route, like actually get locked up. Actually, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm feeling that. That's my reality. You know what I'm saying? I brought one of them with me today. You're gonna meet him in a second. Like I know how real that is. You know what I'm saying? It's like I actually put that burden on myself to actually get out here and do something to change somebody else's life because I felt like I kind of messed up my chance. So this is a chance for me to be able to live through them and keep that spirit going, you know? So when it comes to the effort that we putting together here, like I just ask y'all to just kind of like tap in from that perspective. I don't really know y'all background, what you come from, what you experienced in life, but just tap in from that perspective. That's why they out here today asking you, because that's our reality, you feel what I'm saying? Like, so like just basically have a conscience. With what you're seeing put in front of you, I'm asking y'all just to have a conscience about like what we're asking here today. And I don't really feel like it should take all this, you know what I'm saying? Because it's on the news, so it's being publicized that it's an issue. Head law enforcement, it's an issue. You know what I'm saying? We just ask that y'all look at it from that perspective, and that's it with me. Jahari Smith.
Thank you. All right, so Mr. Chair, that concludes the individuals that signed up. However, I'm looking at our next category, and the folks that have signed up for matters not on the agenda, I believe they may have signed up in the wrong on the wrong sign-in sheet because there's still several folks that want to speak on the subject matter of gangs and peace. So if you would allow me to call these names and have them display for the record that they should be under the current item that we're on right now, not the actual sheet that they signed up on.
Absolutely, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. All right, so next is Darryl Sutton.
I'm Darryl Sutton at address 3912 Pinecone Drive, and I'm speaking on Gangs and Peace. I have a question. Why are the funds why are people voting against when we out here trying to save lives? You know, that's our future reflection, right? And people elect you to be a representation of them. And I'm kind of frustrated because I feel like you're letting the people down. And you're not letting only the people down, you're also letting the kids down. How would you feel if your kids were cut from funding and underprivileged and don't have the opportunities like the rest of y'all do? I mean, you know, you got people want to be lawyers, doctors, people that represents their community, but I mean, you got guys who are actually considered to be peacemakers, were considered to be sons of God, right? And you're voting against that funding. So I feel like, aren't you not going against the will of God? The greatest among you are those who serve you. So who do you serve? Are you in it for self-gain? Do you have a conscience? My thing is, if I'm a political strategist, I use this against you when it's time to come for election. So in order to correct your wrong, I advise you to vote for the funding. We're saving lives. Life or death is in your hand. So what are you gonna do? Choice is up to you.
Thank you. Next is Malachi Ahmed. Malachi Ahmed.
My name is Malachi Ahmed. I address 341 Percival Road, and I'm speaking on gang and peace. And I want to say I'm a survivor of shootings. I done been shot twice this year. I mean, once last year, and about 3 months ago. And I'm trying to push for a different route because like it's nothing to do for real. Like it's really nothing to do here in South Carolina besides chilling in the hood or something with people that's trying to sell drugs or something like that. Like, and It's crazy, like it be people that you went to school with, but you're not trying to strive for that. You're trying to strive to be something in life. And I'm going to school now and try to be a barber or something just to get from here or something. From out of South Carolina. That's how I'm thinking about South Carolina, because it's nothing down here to do. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Next is Ann Mickle. Ann Mickle.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Mickle. My address is 129 Island View Circle, Wood Creek Farms, Columbia, South Carolina. I know many of you on County Council. It's good to see you, not necessarily under these circumstances. The Bible says to render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and render unto God what belongs to God. So with all due respect, I render unto you my opinion, my respect, and now my vote and the influence that comes with that. I'm a lawyer with Mickle & Bass Law Firm. I've come here in support of Gangs and Peace. I've come here in support of my brother and friend, Bishop Eric Davis. I'm here in support of the frontliners who are willing to take up this issue and man this issue for the sake of the community. I'm here as a mother of 3. I'm here as a wife of 33 years. I'm here as a business owner with 4 offices across the state. And I'm here to lend my voice to say that this violence in our community has got to stop. I'm here to say that the people that are represented here in this room are a fraction of the people that are outside. This might represent a 20th of the line that was wrapping around this building. I thought Obama was in here. And so I'm asking you, from the perspectives that I come to you in, former neighbor, Councilman Livingston, Attorney Walker, and many others, process cannot trample the urgency of this moment. It is urgent that this issue be addressed. I've never come to a council meeting before, but I'm here now.
That is your time, ma'am.
Here now, urging you to support the $200,000 request for this community.
Thank you
very much for your time and for listening.
Next, we have LaKenya Maxwell.
Yes, my name is LaKenya Maxwell. Address is 118 Carterman Court. I'm here on the behalf of my son I lost last year, 16-year-old Michael Thomas, that was chased down on Fairfield Road by a Richland County Sheriff Deputy. I'm also here to address the concern about how we align our citizens to not have the proper funding to be able to doggone have things to do for our children here. I stay in the community right here off of Fairfield Road and was told by the office that we are not allowed to have a basketball goal in front of our home. The children don't have anything to do. And I'm also here to support the game to actually help initiate what's going on within our communities. It's just a hard journey for our kids to keep on continuing to face stuff that we don't have no kind of commitment to and being addressed to today. So I hope that they be able to get the funding, what needed to be to get to be able to address everything that's needed to be done for our kids. Our kids just like any one of y'all kids as well. So just take the consideration that we need the funding to help support our kids. And I'm all for it if I can do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Bishop Eric Davis.
I'm Eric Davis. I reside at 22 Keeneland Trail, Blythewood, South Carolina. We're here today, and I'm speaking to the council, but I'm speaking in the presence of, as Attorney Ann Mickle said, a fraction of the people who are greatly concerned about this marginalized community that I believe is being treated unfairly because of political processes and, frankly, callousness. On May 26th, Sheriff Lott called for an emergency press conference because, as the newspaper stated, we were losing a generation. I find it difficult to believe that between May 26th and July 12th, which I think was the last meeting we had, that the emergency was averted. And all these things that we've heard just dissipated and went away. The only difference between May 26th in our community and July 12th was that these men came to the request of our county, our sheriff, and put themselves and their lives on the line for the sake of our community. What you see here is the broader community, and let me explain, because it's very important that the people here understand that there will be those who say they support you, but they support you going through the process, and you'll be funded through the process. As it was said, it will likely, in terms of the peace that we're trying to maintain, it'd be very difficult to maintain it over the 6 to 9 months. They know that it will take that long to fund an initiative like this. We, as a faith community, many of those who are from the Word of God community, have committed to put the $200,000 up front. We're only asking to be reimbursed. You know that there are not many entities that can bring the resources to bear to do the work and bring the right people to the process, and we're doing it because we see it as an emergency. They see it as an emergency. The people in the community see it. The only people, it appears, that don't see it as an emergency is this council. Now, we have called gangs those individuals who are unreasonable, can't be convinced to do properly in our communities. My question is, who's the real gang?
Mr. Chair, that concludes individuals that have signed up to speak under item 7 for citizens input.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Next item on the agenda is item 8, citizens input. This must pertain to Richland County matters not on the agenda, items for which a public hearing is required or a public hearing has been scheduled, cannot be addressed at this time. I believe, Madam Vice Chair, we don't have anyone else signed up to speak under that category, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Next item on the agenda is item 9, report of the county administrator. Mr. Brown, you're recognized, sir. Sir, you're out of order, okay? Thank you. All right, Mr. Brown.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I have just a few quick items to bring your attention. In your packet, what you have, as I mentioned at the last meeting, is our potential submission to HUD relative to the CDBG and home programs. So we wanted to give you that information in enough time where you can look at it, ask questions about it. It's going to go through a public display period. And then when the council comes back later on in August, we'll be looking forward to hopefully having the council address that matter. But we want to give you enough leeway to look at that document and ask questions that you may have about it. So if you have questions that have to do with, just please submit them to me. You can also copy ACA Jensen on those questions as well. And so that's what is in your packet. There's no action required on that at this time, but it is for information purposes. The only other thing, Mr. Chair, under other updates, certainly pleased to communicate to you that earlier this month, we were able to select a facility manager for the detention center. He's actually present on this evening. Just want to take a quick moment to allow him to address the body, but his name is Darryl Cato. He is now the detention center director, comes to us with a number of years of experience, education, and certifications. And so I believe that he will assist us in taking the Alvarez Glen Detention Center from, as I've shared with him, from the bottom 10 to the top 10.
Brown, is Director Cato in the chamber tonight, or is he?
He is in the chamber.
Director Cato, you're recognized. So I'll take that podium over there.
Good evening.
Good evening, Director. You're recognized.
All right. Well, I'm glad to be in Richland County. I want to thank y'all for the opportunity to actually come here and use some of the certifications that Mr. Brown actually spoke of. Started my career at Lee Correctional in 2002. Stayed there about 3-4 years, transitioned to Camden Police Department, stayed there about 6 years, made supervisor there. From there, I went to Kershaw County Detention Center, made lieutenant of administration, lieutenant of operations, captain, then jail administrator, and left there to actually come to Richland County to actually, like Mr. Brown said, we're going from the bottom 10 to the top 10. The way we're going to get there is teamwork, innovative, outside of the box thinking, and actually just working with the community. People we see here today, actually getting them involved and actually, taking our detention center and making it something that we all can be proud of. So I'll be here to the end of the council meeting. If anybody wants to actually, talk, say anything, I'll be here the whole meeting.
Director Cato, let me just thank you for being willing to step up and serve in this way. It's no secret. So hold on. Everyone, if you would, please just be mindful of the fact that we are engaged in business, the public's business. So just be mindful about decorum as well as keeping your voices lowered as much as possible, okay? Thank you. But Director Cato, I was saying that I just want to thank you for your willingness to step up and serve in this way. It's no secret that, the challenges at the jail are, fairly monumental, but certainly we trust Mr. Brown's judgment. We believe we got the right man for the job, and this council, we support you. And if there's anything that you need, by all means, don't be afraid to let Mr. Brown know, and we want to support you in any way that we can. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the body for Director Cato? You recognize Ms. McBride? Oh, for Mr. Brown. Well.
Is this the plan that must be submitted to the federal government in order for us to get community development funds to address homelessness and different infrastructure areas?
That is the required plan that must be submitted. It's a 5-year plan. That is correct. By Title 24 requires that we submit that plan.
And based on federal regulations, we would not be able to receive any funding without complying with this plan. Is that?
The new allocation that's set out that explains how we're going to be doing that. Yes, ma'am. It would certainly hinder our chances of receiving that funding.
Thank you.
Additional questions from the body for Mr. Brown? Mr. Brown, does that conclude your report?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 10, report of the Clerk of Council. Madam Clerk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Walker. Just a reminder that we have a special call meeting scheduled for next Tuesday, July the 26th at 7:45 p.m.
Does that conclude the report of the clerk, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Chairman. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item 11, which is the report of the chair. And at this time, the chair does not have any updates or announcements for this body. Next item on the agenda is item 12, second reading items. And item 12A, which is an ordinance amending the school resource officer line item in fiscal year 23, budget ordinance number 12-22-HR of Richland County, South Carolina. At this time, I entertain a motion.
Oh, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Moved to properly second. Any discussion? All right, there being none, Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Malinowski?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
McBride?
Yes.
Livingston?
Yes.
Joe Walker?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Mackey?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 12B, which is an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of certain property located in Richland County and other matters related hereto. At this time, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved to properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski? Pugh?
Yes.
McBride?
Yes.
Livingston?
Yes.
Joe Walker?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Mackey?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is item 13, which is a report of the Coronavirus Ad Hoc Committee that will be provided by the Honorable Paul Livingston. Mr. Livingston, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. And for the audience, Mr. Walker, thank you. For the audience, I'm filling in for our chair of our coronavirus ad hoc committee, Ms. Gresham Barron. And Mr. Chair, if there's no objection because of the audience, I'd like to start with item 13B rather than 13A. If there's
sure. Objection.
And 13B is the item reference gangs in peace initiative. And you'll find that in your package on page 415 through 432. That item came before the coronavirus ad hoc committee. At that time, the committee felt that there was not enough information referenced that item of that request. So the committee requested additional information and to forward that to council upon getting that additional information. You may recall that that came before council at our last meeting and it was deferred to this meeting. So the committee's recommendation was just simply to forward to council for discussion and consideration. So now it's before council.
Thank you. Livingston, any discussion or questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
You're recognized, Ms. English.
And I want to please beg the council's indulgence, if you will. But I feel the need to share with all constituents that we've always supported improving Richland County in every aspect. It's our goal to improve the county as a whole and to ensure public funds are being spent with prudence and foresight. We don't haphazardly enter into agreements based on feelings or emotions. And with that, I'd like to share that as a mental health counselor, a minister, a social worker, a psychosocial rehabilitative specialist, I have had the opportunity to work with various agencies, the Office of Special Education, Health and Environmental Control, Mental Health, Disabilities and Special Needs, Health and Human Resources, Vocational Rehabilitation, the Office of Aging, Centers for Disability Resources, ABLE, Disability Rights, Brain Injury, Family Connection, Department of Social Services, Veterans Affairs, Victims Assistance, Law Enforcement, CASA, school districts, foster care, Latinx organizations, CDC and PASOs. The list is numerous. I've advocated for a lot. That's what I do and have done for over 20 years. As a number of these are critically required part of every program. No process can begin without it. This council has often spoken about equity, inclusion, and transparency, and we too must adhere to those standards. It is our responsibility to the citizens of Richland County to ensure those processes of assessment and evaluations that we clearly understand and can definitively justify those expenses to all taxpayers. What cannot be tolerated is the level of disrespect from any agency or organization that comes before this body. We want to be good stewards of these funds and address the needs of many for the best needs of this county. We speak with constituents daily and spend hours each week reviewing documents and talking with staff, ensuring that we are prepared to make the best decisions that impact Richland County. We thank you for this proposal. We applaud your efforts. We clearly understand the need, but it must go through appropriate process of being vetted and held to the same standards as all the other programs. These are federal dollars and the requirements are in place. We thank you and I thank you and I appreciate your indulgence. But with that, I move that the Gang in Peace program go through the appropriate process to be considered for these federal ARPA funds.
English. So with respect to your motion, is your motion referring this item, to, I guess, the application process and they would still have to apply or submit an application just like any other 501c3 that's seeking federal dollars?
That is correct.
So this referral does not remove the obligation or the requirement to submit an application. Is that correct?
That is correct. Federal guidelines are clearly in place. Thank you, sir.
A second.
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion? let me just say, this kind of brings to mind a Winston Churchill quote that a lie would make it halfway around the world before the truth can get its pants on. And what's been, I guess the narrative that's been put out there is that somehow Richland County Council, we're callous, we don't care about the community, that we don't care about what's happening in disadvantaged communities. We don't care about people that look like some of us that sit on this council, been threatened politically. And I'll just tell any of you in here, if you vote me out in 2024, my wife probably said you've done her a favor because she can have her husband back with all the time that I have to spend away from my family as part of public service. And I don't complain about it because this is what we all enjoy doing, which is serving the community. And I think what's been lost is it's not just about process. It's not just about that. What may be surprising to many people is that this is an initiative that most folks here on Richland County can actually support. We actually hold it in high esteem. We think it's wonderful for some of the work that this entity has done. But at the same time, the request is not ripe for consideration. This is not the same as coming before County Council and asking for funds from the council's general fund. These are federal dollars, which is a separate pot of money. And in order to handle or consider requests for those dollars, there has to be a process in place to handle that sort of request. We just can't willy-nilly give out federal dollars. When someone makes the request for ARPA funds, the program has to be vetted. So even if council decided tonight that we want to give you $500,000 for the program, ultimately that request couldn't be honored until it's actually vetted by a third-party vendor to determine whether or not the program itself comports with federal or U.S. Treasury guidelines. Because these funds are not expended in accordance with U.S. Treasury guidelines, guess who has to pay that money back? The taxpayers. Not the folks who received the funds and may not have used it in accordance with U.S. Treasury guidelines, but taxpayers have to pay those funds back. So if anything, this council is making sure that we are a good steward of funds that have been received. That is all we're trying to do. No one has said that we don't support the program. A young man this evening said it shouldn't take all of this. He's absolutely right. It shouldn't take all of this because right now, the request is not even ripe for consideration. And there's no one on this body who has said that they don't support it. But we want to make sure that if we're going to support it, that we go about doing it the right way. That is all this body has said. It's not a vote against the program. It's not a vote against the initiative. We all actually support what's happening. But at the same time, we must do things in decency and order. So with that in mind, if there's not anything further from this body with respect to discussion, I'm ready to vote. Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski?
Yes.
Let me stop you. Sorry, Madam Clerk. No more outbursts in the chamber. It's not appropriate. That's not how we do things here. If you can't comport yourself, please leave the chamber now, or I can have law enforcement escort you out. Continue on with the vote, Madam Clerk.
You?
Oh.
McBride?
Yes.
Livingston?
Yes.
Horatio? Joe Walker?
Oh.
O. Walker?
Madam Clerk, just to be sure, this is a vote to have it sent to the process. Is that correct? All right. My vote is yes.
Mackey?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Still have the floor, Mr. Livingston.
That brings us to the next item on the agenda regarding the report of the Coronavirus Ad Hoc Committee, and that is the proposed grant application and process. Mr. Chair, I like
Away from
move
the
to-
clear
for
the chamber.
recess for
Away from the clear the chamber.
That's okay. I'll send it to you.
Oh, yeah. You guys have the right idea.
Hey.
I need to call you. We already. Over with you. And
BA. So, Mr. Livingston, you still have the floor.
Yeah, you can have to bear with me a lot on this one. I may need some help from the staff too regarding where we are as it relates to the grant application and the application process. Because the last time when we referred to this meeting, there was an application in the packet. That application is not in the current package. But that is what's before us tonight is to approve that grant application.
Applications not in the packet, Mr. Livingston.
I didn't see it. There's one about the discretionary grant that we'll use as a model, and some of that maybe that was intent, but not the actual grant itself. Is that correct, staff, whomever, whatever?
So I can address some of that, Mr. Livingston and members of council. So beginning on page 4, so to answer the question directly, the previous application is not listed in the packet for a couple of reasons. The one, size of the document, and that information being previously presented. We had talked before about not repetitively putting large amounts of documents into the packet and being repetitive in that method. But that grant application that you did see before, with the adjustments that were made, that information was updated. In your packet, what you have right now is beginning, I believe, on page 404. If you look at the proposed grant application and the application process that came out of the committee, there were notes that are listed. Those notes represent the motions that were made and recommended by the ad hoc committee at the last meeting. And those motions that are listed, I don't know if you want me to read them out to you.
Yeah, I got that part. Right now, I'm just talking about the application itself. Then I'll talk a little about the process.
So yes, sir, that physical application that we looked at, that we updated with all the last information, that application is not in the packet. But that is the same application before that was just included with the additional changes that were made and requested by members of the council, members of the committee.
If council members have received and support that application, we can move forward with just simply accepting that application, or we can just do it at our next meeting. But what's before us now is just the proposed application itself, and then I'll talk about the process.
Recognize Ms. McBride.
Yes, because the committee has done a lot of work in this area. With the current application, I would like to make a motion that we move forward with the recommended application and let the administrator and staff to critique it or refine it and using the best prototype applications for the grant process. So I would like to move forward with the recommendation of the committee, but for our staff to use their professionalism to refine that application.
Second that reference application, Mr. Chair.
Very good.
Mackey and then Mr. Malinowski.
No, you seconded that. That was your motion, I thought, right?
Right, and it's been seconded by
Okay.
Mr. Livingston. Okay, you recognize
Thank
Ms.
you.
Mackey.
I would like to offer, I guess, a friendly amendment if possible, knowing that it is important that we get these application and funds out to the community as soon as possible. I would like to put a deadline when administration would bring this back to full council. And so if we could say in August 30th at our next meeting, is that doable?
We can say that because the application has not changed since the last meeting. But yes, ma'am, we can bring it back at the August 30th meeting.
So the application as well as with your recommendations for the process per Ms. McBride's motion.
The application,
Recognize, Mr.
The application is complete, it hadn't changed or whatever. I mean, that's something we could easily approve now or the next meeting before we leave for our break. It's important to me that staff be prepared to get some stuff done while we're breaking instead of wasting a whole lot of
I
time.
motion approve the process for it to be refined some, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I thought
Because
Ms.
you-
Mackey was saying
Oh, no.
push something.
She was just given a date, right?
That was it, a date for it to come back. Oh, we just, is this, let me stop and ask this. Is your motion, I guess the maker, is the intent of the motion that we approve and send to administration and then we don't see it again and it goes out?
That would be because we've already improved the intent of the application would be, and we could come back to us on April the 30th, and I'm sorry, August the 30th. And why I said that we needed, because you need the process with the application. So it's hard to submit that application without having guidelines to go along with it. And therefore, that's why Ms. Mackey's motion for the 30th was more sensible, logical, that the process would be, the guidelines would be completed also. Is that Mr. Livingston? Okay.
And Ms. Mackey, was your suggestion, I guess, an amendment, a friendly amendment?
It was just a friendly addition to add a date to her motion. So asking for August 30th, which is our next regular scheduled meeting.
And this only, Ms. McBride, this applies just to the application, or are we talking about the process, or is that going to be a conversation we have after this vote?
After this one, I would have liked to combine the two, but we didn't. The motion was just for the application.
Just want clarity, that's all.
Mm-hmm. But I would love to combine the process with the application if possible.
We have everything we want, right?
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Hugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Joe Walker,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Livingston?
That brings us to the second part of that question of 13A, and that is the application process itself.
Fine. If you don't mind, maybe just you speak with whomever is in the lobby. At this point, they are distracting at least me to where I can't even listen to Mr. Livingston intently. We may have to just move him out of move him outside the building.
Let me just share on page 4 or 5 in your packet. You'll see several motions there. Now, some of those motions are a little outdated because we delayed the process where it says no later than August 1 for the application process and so forth. So those dates will change. But just to give some idea of the committee's discussion, so you can see where we are, and that is the committee talked about utilizing something similar to the discretionary grant process. I recall even before that, having applications vetted by an outside vendor, so that way we'll know for qualifications and so forth. So once that's done, then it's sent to a similar process like that of the discretionary grant committee. There was some discussion about that as to whether or not there will be council members on that committee that's going to score those applications as the discretionary grant does with discretionary grant funding. Was part of the discussion. How the committee will be made up, because right now the discretionary grant committee do have 2 council members on it, and there was some discussion about whether or not this committee ought to just be staff and community, whomever the committee would be. So I don't know whether that was ever resolved or not, but we talked about it being some to that process. Then another thing was talked about, and then that group was forwarded to the ad hoc committee, so the committee can review it and then send it to council. So the question now is, based on those conversations, whatever, is what we want that process to look like. And let me ask staff to respond, who's in that meeting and so forth too, about anything I might have left out or need to add as relates to what we discussed about the process. Do you remember anything?
I don't think you left anything out, Mr. Livingston. I think in terms of the process, if I could clarify, and you can help me if I mess up, but applicant applies through the Zoom grants portal. If they need technical assistance, we have staff that would provide technical assistance, but ultimately everybody applies to the Zoom grant portal. Application is received, the council approves, ultimately, we just assume the council has approved a third party who then vets the eligibility of those applications. Once they are vetted, if they are eligible, they then would go to, and this is where you come in at, this discretionary style committee. So then that process is something that was, as you listed, showed here in your motion 2, approval to use the discretionary grant approval process as a basis of the evaluation. So that would be whatever committee or group does that would make that determination. And then ultimately, that funding then is decided upon through that process using that group. So you got the one group determining eligibility, the other group determining who is going to receive the funding. But who the group is to your point, Mr. Livingston, what needs to be decided? What is the makeup of that group? Who does that include? That has not been determined or decided.
Recognize.
I direct my question to Mr. Brown. For the external reviewers are the vendor that we're going to contract with, would it be possible for them using a rubric that helps make sure that the process is as fair as possible for them to evaluate the grants, grade them?
So you would want the group to determine eligibility and then to also potentially use something to evaluate them as well?
Yes, and as long as we, this is a possibility, an external group.
Right.
Either that group or external grant evaluators, and that a rubric would be developed. And then so the rubric takes out the subjectivity in the evaluation of the grant. So they would have to develop the rubric to use to evaluate the application.
So yes, there is a possibility. We would have to, obviously put that in a scope of work and to see who would respond to that. But yes, ma'am.
And using vendors before, they oftentimes will just recruit evaluators, grant evaluators to come in and evaluate, and they go through the training. So my issue is that I would recommend that council members, to ensure that the process is not politicized, that we not be involved in the evaluation and the ranking of the grants.
You recognize Mr. Livingston?
I'm saying that these are the kind of things I think we got to decide, and someone need to make a motion as to how to move forward with them.
So I would recommend, I move that we use the external evaluator vendor to develop a rubric as well as to vet the applications and to evaluate them. And then they come back before council.
I think that's consistent with the committee's recommendation around that item, pretty much. Would you say, Mr. Brown? As far as the outside vendor, the third party vendor?
That's a little bit clearer and more defined, but yes, we did talk about using someone other than the staff to make those determinations.
McBride, I have a question for you. So with your motion, the request, I assume would go to, say, Zoom grants, right? And then a third party vendor, whomever it is that we contract with, would evaluate that request to determine if it comports with U.S. Treasury guidelines, right?
That was the committee's recommendation.
Right. Okay. So, and then after that, the next step in the process would be that it goes before, I guess, with staff, or would it be a third party vendor for the evaluation?
Yeah, we could use the same vendor to recruit evaluators. Are they evaluated?
And then once they evaluate it, should it then, those findings come before the full council, or should it go before the COVID ad hoc committee?
So they would do, and that's why I mentioned the guidelines, because they would evaluate those grants. And what's needed is, we don't know the evaluation. Are we going to fund grants that rank 70 and above? None of that has been defined. And that's why I'm saying that we need more input in the development, because I could go through a whole process in terms of how you evaluate, but I know we don't have the time. That's why we need a professional person to help us develop that whole process.
And my next question, and Ms. McBride, this is for you or for any members of the body, but do we want this process, I guess, to include an anonymity feature where when you have a vendor, not a vendor, but if someone submits an application and they're being scored or graded, that you don't know the identity is anonymous?
It's a blind.
Sort of a blind. Is that something that
Yes, that would be a part of it, I would hope.
All right. And you recognize Madam Vice Chair.
Sorry, I may have missed this. So was the recommendation for it to go back to COVID and then come to council after all of that happens?
So after the recommendation was to forward it on to administration, where professional staff can work within and developing that. Now, the next phase of it, I don't know whether it's necessary to go back to the coronavirus committee or come straight to council. I don't have a recommendation for that.
Is that a decision that needs to be made tonight or made part of the motion? Or is that something that we can hash out later?
Well, my concern is I want us to get as much as we can done now, so staff can be working on something while we're out for a whole month.
Mm-hmm.
We got to give them something working on. So
that's why I think that's why Ms. Mackey put in the date by August the 31st, and I think Mr. Brown stated we could do all that by that time. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am. I'm not sure in terms of we can have the vendor on board at that time, because we have to go through that RFP process. But in terms of developing the additional guidelines is what I'm hearing to go along with the application. Yes, but having a vendor on board by that time, I mean, it's July now, there's still the process of going through that selection. So, but we can have the guidelines, yes.
Recognize Mr. Livingston.
Sure. Now, the committee talked about the vendor, but the committee primary focus on the vendor was just for compliance. But now I think we're talking about using the vendor for another step based on what Ms. McBride is saying, correct?
Correct, that is my understanding.
So you'd be using the vendor to make sure there's compliance. But that next step where we talked about doing stuff similar to the discretionary grant committee, whereby the applications are scored, Ms. McBride, are you suggesting that the vendor be used to do that too?
I'm suggesting that the vendor could assist because we could have external evaluators coming in for that. And it's not a real difficult process. It may sound like it is.
Who will those evaluators be that's going to score? Who's going to score the application?
Okay, that's when you have, with the grant process is normal and, state is done in the state all the time. It's also done by federal government. You put out a request for grant reviewers and they go through the training and they review the grants and they have a rubric that they follow so they know that based on what's in the application, you get so many points. Otherwise, if we try to review those applications, it's very subjective. But this provides more accountability in the evaluation process. Now, if you want to use if we want to take on that and use staff and other, for example, in the discretionary grant program, at one time, we use council members, community members, and staff to evaluate the grants.
Right, that's what
we use that. That can still be done as long as we have the rubric in place, but I would say my recommendation was to exclude council members. And what you found is that most council members did not want to participate in the process for the reason that they didn't want to seem biased and have feedback coming from the communities.
And would it be feasible for us to ask staff that, based on those parameters, come up with something for the evaluation process based on the parameters of not including council members, but you may include a community person or staff or whomever, but not council members, and let staff come up with something?
I could, as long as it's a blind review and there's a rubric in place.
Recognize Ms.
Thank you. And just to, I guess, further go down that road, as Mr. Livingston stated, it'd be good for us to talk about all this now. So you have the outside reviewer, evaluators come in, they all rank them. And then at that point, if you, let's say you have 20 applications, they're all ranked, and maybe you have 5 or 6 of them that have the same score, then that is presented to the committee, and then the committee makes the final decision based off the allotted money that we have, because you could receive applications that exceed that dollar amount. So ultimately, council is not reviewing them, but council will have the final say of, based off these rubrics, then maybe there were, 6 of them that scored high, and we can decide, well, we're only going to fund 3 based off the available funds in that category. Is that the full intent of the process?
Recognize Ms. McBride.
See, that was part of the things that was missing in the process, because we've got $1 million out, and you say for workforce development, and we don't say how many projects we're going to fund, what is the budget up to. It's real loose, the criteria that's developed now. So it makes it difficult.
Some other stuff I was going to talk about.
Yeah, but all that's going to be a part of the process. And that's why I'm saying, let's give it to staff and let them refine that, because it's so many different missing pieces that has to be there.
And that's what I was trying to get through is the evaluation process, and then talk about the money part and that kind of thing. But the next thing is one of the other recommendations was, the question was, if an organization does education and food insecurity and affordable housing, several different things, can they apply more than one time? Committee recommendation was, yes, one agency can apply for up to 3 categories. And one thing we didn't agree on, but we talked a little bit about was, how much, and we need to be up to a certain amount. So the committee's recommendation is for approval of up to 3 categories based on organization.
You recognize Ms. English.
Thank you. I with the and with Mr. Brown that this is something I do for a living every day. And we do have federal regulations and guidelines where I have council members actually score the grants that come in, our federal grants. And I can bring you the copy of that, and it may help. It's, the SMART guidelines. They're measurable, they're achievable, the ability to replicate. And I can just bring you that paperwork that may make it easier. I know those organizations that work with federal guidelines may have these as well, but just to give you an idea of what we have, I can actually send those to the clerk's office and they can forward them on to you. That'll help.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
No,
Brown.
Mr. Chair, I was just going to say, and when you look at what's in the packet, you may have said this is not, you want more for our funds, but like if you look on, for example, on page 412 of the packet, and it talks about project summary, right above there, it talks about the criteria, and those, then it starts going down, you know, what that application evaluation looks like. So I just want you to, I don't want you to think that there was nothing in there. That's why they talked about using the discretionary committee as a basis. So again, we can look at other options that may be more applicable to this, but I did want you to know that there was some criteria that were listed in here that explain how the discretionary committee process works. And there was a basis. So I hear what you're saying. I'm taking that. I'm saying, got it. But I did want you to understand that there was information there that was trying to communicate how these particular applications could be evaluated if you utilize the discretionary grant committee process. Thank you.
Now further discussion. All right, Madam Clerk. Well,
I'm sorry.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Brown, Mr. Livingston.
So I can probably try to make one big swoop motion based on what's been heard at this point. Can we, on page 405, you know, the committee's recommendation regarding the number of categories one could apply for is something we need to decide on. And the committee's recommendation was up to 3.
Motion that's on the floor. So I believe Ms. McBride's motion is on the floor right now. I know we have it. I mean, we're in discussion, but.
Well, we'll go back to that one, come back later then. So
vote on Ms. McBride's motion and come back to you know, that the paragraph that item that you're looking at.
Yeah. Motion.
Would you state the motion again, please, just for clarity?
Okay, Miss, I remember. To take the recommendations from the Coronavirus Committee and forward them to the administrator and his staff for refining. Also, that the process for evaluation would use external evaluators, staff or others, and that there would be a rubric in place and that it would be a blind review.
But I think your motion may have included amendment from Aki with respect to the date.
That was in the other motion, but also to include by August the 31st for this one also. 30th, okay, August 30th.
It's been moved to properly second. So we've already discussion. So Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
McBride?
Yes.
Livingston?
Yes.
Joe Walker?
Yes.
Paul Walker?
Yes.
Mackey?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Now the floor, Mr. Livingston.
I go to motion 3 on the bottom, page 405 from the committee's report, and that was approval of organizations to apply for up to 3 categories. That's committee.
For the committee's recommendation, any discussion? You recognize Ms. McBride.
So with the committee's recommendation, that would be, they could apply for 3 separate grants. Is that what you're saying? So one entity could get up to $600,000 or $700,000 because we haven't, and could eat up all the money. I guess I have.
That's Mr. Rad. We're gonna get to the question is up to a certain amount for each grant too. So that's going to determine.
I guess that was my issue, whether I could vote on that, knowing that one entity could almost monopolize an area, and we're trying to distribute the funds to as many as possible. So unless that within the grant, see, one area could address workforce development, could address mental health issues or whatever. So one area could address several issues. one category could address several issues because they're so interrelated. So I don't know about letting one entity receive 3 different grants. Unless there be some type of priority in terms of they get one, and I'm just sort of confused with that.
Recognize Ms. Mackey.
Thank you. I do like the option of allowing organizations to apply for more than one category. I think when looking at wanting to use ARPA funds to truly make an impact in the community and one that we can see, I do think some of these organizations may truly be able to help with mental health and workforce, or mental health and homelessness, and allowing them to apply for both, I think creates that impact in the community, especially if their application is good, their process is good, and it's gone through the review process, and it's a stellar program that has those true impacts that we can measure and that we can say after 2 years, here is the true impact that they were able to create in the community. And I think if that's the case and we can walk away and say, man, you know what, that $400,000, $500,000 that we gave them, look at what it was able to do. And so I do think, looking at the process will help us evaluate also what is quality applications. And I think that'll help us determine too that, okay, regardless of how much it is, if this is one organization can truly be everything that it needs to be for this certain issue and can develop a program that provides impact and numbers that we can track and actually see, then I think that's what the funds are for, and we'll all be happy for the impact in the community. So I like the ability to have more than one category to see the type of programs that we can receive by not restricting our organizations.
Recognize Mr. Malinowski and then Ms. McBride.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I can accept groups, individuals applying for more than one category, there is the flip side also of what Ms. Mackey said. And we could say, wow, it was really worth giving them that $400,000. And the flip side could be, we should have stuck them into one category only because those other 1 or 2 were wasted. So I think we need to be willing to spread the wealth, so to speak, and get as much of these funds out there to as many organizations as we can. And therefore, I think they should be allowed to apply for the up to 3, but I think that it should be up to these evaluators to pick which one they think. They could even rank them. Here's my first, second, and third choice, like we do with some of these folks that apply for more than one committee, and let the evaluators decide where they think they would best fit in for the use of those funds, award them funding from only one category up to whatever dollar amounts were decided that they should be allowed to get. Thank you.
Malinowski, Ms. McBride.
Yeah, I sort of support Bill's response, but also that usually when you have a comprehensive program like that, you're working with more than one issue, maybe 2 or 3 issues. All of it is done in one grant application because there's some continuity in terms of presenting the program or providing the services. And but for 3 separate applications, I'm just concerned about equity funding.
That's Ms. Mackey.
I hear what you're saying. I think we're kind of saying the same thing in the sense of, yes, you have an applicant that comes, and you're right, it's comprehensive. It addresses homelessness. It addresses mental health. They can submit that same program in the homelessness category and the mental health, but they may only get funded out of one category. But if you tell them they're addressing all 3, but you're only saying, hey, you can only fit in one, and when it runs out, it run out, but then you still have all this money in the other categories that they're meeting those needs. So I feel like the organization, if it's comprehensive and they do all those, can we not allow them to submit for each of those categories that their program encompasses, but they only can get funded from one? Because then their chances, in my opinion, I don't want to miss out on a good program. And I hear we want to spread the wealth, but I want to make sure that we're not missing out on a quality program because the line item that we had, the dollar amount for a certain line item wasn't enough, but then another category, maybe we didn't get as many folks and there was money left over that matches that need, but we told folks they could only submit for one. So at least I feel like giving them more than one category allows them to submit and have the opportunity.
Further discussion?
I have a quick question.
All right, Ms. English.
I wanted to know if there was a time frame. Is this first come, first serve, or is this time sensitive where funds have to be spent by a certain time?
Mr. Brown?
So that's a good question, and that's exactly what we're trying to get the council to establish. I heard Ms. Mac, to answer your question, I heard Ms. McBride mention and Mr. Malinowski mentioned, we want to get as many people as possible. The federal guidelines or communication from Treasury was to be impactful. So is that quantity or is that, one entity gets a large amount? To your point, is it a timeline? Those are all self-imposed things by potentially this body. So that's actually what I need from you to tell me how you want that box to end. So what we've done is we've given the broad categories in which are applicable, and we're asking, how do you want us to help distribute those funds to the community as a body?
We could say applications submitted between August and December. And then if we still have funds left over, then we can come back.
Correct. You could do that. You could do a rolling time frame. You can do we'll wait till we get everything in and then evaluate. Those are options for you to choose depending on how you want this to happen. There's no one size fits all. These are developed programs, and what we develop that you deem is best for Richland County will be the program for Richland County. There is no specific template that you have to use. That's the good thing about this opportunity. You get to create this within the categories that are eligible for funding.
Recognize Mr. Livingston.
With motion is before us is the committee's recommendation regarding whether or not we're going to have up to 3 categories.
Next, let's go.
Motion.
iPhone 4.
Additional discussion. Madam Clerk, let's take the vote.
What's the motion?
What's the motion again?
It's the recommendation from the committee.
Recommendation regarding allowing someone to apply for up to 3 categories.
It reads as motion, but it's a recommendation from the committee that doesn't require a motion. Yeah. So that's why I said, let's take the vote. Have a motion because I think previously, Ms. McBride had moved, to a substitute motion in essence for one of the committee's recommendations.
All right.
So, Mr. Malinowski, I'm assuming you want to know what is the recommendation. You have that look, like it's a very just quizzical look on your face. Like, what is this? What is the recommendation?
No, I see it right here.
Okay.
This is number 3.
Right.
And my only question was, okay, if we're only voting for that, we haven't decided on, can they collect funding from all 3 or what maximum? We're not doing any of that now.
Well, I guess if you were to vote no, if the vote was no, then it would be a rejection of the committee's recommendation. So, but right now, what's before us is just the recommendation.
That's not what I asked. Go ahead, take the vote.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
Malinowski?
Yes.
You?
Yes.
McBride?
No.
Livingston?
Yes.
Joe Walker?
No.
O. Walker?
Yes.
Mackey?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Madam Clerk, before you call that final vote, I want to switch over to a no vote now that I'm looking at this closer.
I thought you voted no.
I just want to make sure.
You still want to change?
No, I want to be on the no side.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Just looking out for you, Councilman.
Thank you. I appreciate
it. And motion 4, I think we pretty much agreed to.
Hold on 1 second, Mr. Livingston. Clerk needs to pretty much just declare the vote. The vote on tally.
No, the motion will fail. We have 3 against it. And 5 in favor.
Yeah, so it passes. Yeah, 5 yes, 3 no. That's okay.
We'll have a full deck tonight.
Mr. Malinowski has that effect on folks sometimes.
Now, that next recommendation from the committee is something that I think we took care of the budget process, but it talks about approval of for those groups that are not that during the budget process submit an application. Is what I think we're getting at number 4. But Mr. Brown, isn't that clear that that was the case anyway for those groups that are receiving ARPA funds that have been approved already?
This is saying that everybody has to apply, that's going through this process. So this does not preclude them from applying, but they do have to apply through that process.
I'm sorry, Mr. Livingston, you're.
I don't understand. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I didn't understand.
Well, Ms. McBride and then Ms. Mackey.
I didn't understand your question.
What the motion says, approval for all prior groups who have been allocated funds to date to enter the application to the portal. In other words, for those folks who we've given ARPA funds, it may not be through this process or whatever, but I thought they already have to do that anyway.
Ms. Mackey?
Yes, Mr. Livingston, it was my understanding that council already voted upon that during our budget.
That's not.
So I believe action has already been taken on that.
You would agree to that too, that,
I would agree.
This was, if I recall correctly, during the budget process, Ms. McBride, I believe you may have asked, or you were very adamant about some of the lump sum agencies who we funded historically, but having to go through, having to receive ARPA funds, that there'd be, I guess, some sort of priority given, if I recall correctly. And I remember that was something that you were pretty adamant about.
Yeah, the issue was that even though they're funded, council has proved it, there still needs to be an application on file.
Right, and the point is, I think that's what we've already done. That was a recommendation committee, but I think it's something the council have already decided to do, is my point I was making. Now, the only other item that's not a motion, this is a recommendation from council, was whether or not we wanted up to a certain amount that an organization can receive.
Mr. Livingston, is that part of, I guess, the recommendation? It's listed as motion 4, but is that part of the recommendation?
No, that's not one of the recommendations. That was discussed. I remember it being discussed, but it didn't get into. I don't remember getting into a recommendation. No. We don't even have to action about it.
Question. None. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote with respect to the committee's recommendation?
Malinowski?
What's the recommendation?
The recommendation, it reads approval for all priority.
We decided we didn't have to. That's already been done.
That's been done. So we don't take that up. Okay. So does that,
Well, that concludes, I think.
Like I said, include the report. Well, all right. Well, Mr. Livingston, you still have the floor. I don't.
Concludes all the motions. I remember us having. Mr. Brown, you could.
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes, you may, Mr. Brown.
I'll be brief. Just wanted to say on page 407, 408 of the packet, there's a question that was asked about the timeline. There's a briefing document that communicated general information concerning timelines on pages 407 and 408. I'm not saying you have to vote on that because based on the other vote you took earlier, this wouldn't happen, but just want to communicate that information is in the packet, pages 407 and 408. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
That completes my report, then, Mr. Chair.
All right, next item on the agenda is item 14, which is the report of the Economic Development Committee that will be provided by the Honorable Paul Livingston.
That's item 14A, authorized expansion of the boundaries of the I-77 Corridor Regional Industrial Park jointly developed with Fairfield County to include certain property located in Richland County, the execution and delivery of a public infrastructure credit agreement to provide for public infrastructure credits to a company identified for the time being as project framework and other related matters. And the committee's recommendation is for a first reading regarding that item.
Heard the recommendation of the committee. Excuse me, any discussion or questions? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski. Pugh.
Yes.
McBride. Livingston.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
I'm recusing myself from this vote due to my parent company representing the company mentioned.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the, I'm sorry, Mr. Livingston, does that conclude the report? All right, next item on the agenda is item 15, which is the report of the Rules and Appointments Committee. That will be provided by the Honorable Bill Malinowski.
Yes. Item number 15A, notification of appointments. The Lexington Richland Alcohol and Drug Abuse Council has 2 vacancies. The committee unanimously recommended to appoint 1A, Joshua Douglas Fable, the incumbent, and 1B, Sally Rickenbacker Robinson.
Malinowski, you have, there appears to be some more, notification of appointments on the next page. You want to just go through all of them at once, or?
No, those are all part of this one, sir. There were A through H on the applicants. The committee unanimously recommended to appoint A and B.
Okay. All right. My apologies, Ms. Malinowski. Okay. You've heard the recommendations of the committee. Any discussion or questions? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride. Yes. Joe Walker.
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item 15B1, to rename the Discretionary Grants Committee to the Community Impact Grant Committee and add additional council members to the committee. This comes from council's recent budget motion to allocate an additional $300,000 to the committee and develop a process that creates accountability and transparency. The committee unanimously recommends for this to take place.
All right, you've heard the recommendation of the committee. Any discussion or questions? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride. Livingston.
Yes.
Joe Walker.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item 15B2.
Mr. Malinowski, let me just stop you just for a second. Ms. Mackey had her hand raised.
I'm sorry, and sorry, Ms. Malinowski, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I did just want to point out additionally, for the same thing as timeliness with the distribution of these additional funds, the committee, would like for you as chair to name the additional members as soon as possible so that they can begin meeting. Thank you.
Duly noted, Madam Vice Chair. Mr. Malinowski.
Item 15B2, disclosure of addresses / personal information of applicants. There was discussion on this one because every time someone makes an application to a board, committee, or commission, they put down a lot of personal information on that particular application, to include home addresses, phone numbers, cell number, job. They put down a curriculum vitae in some instances. And so the committee is recommending that all of this information, all of this personal information, be removed from the public view when these applicants are named as individuals who want to serve on a board, committee, or commission, and that information would be made available to council members and staff only.
For the recommendation of the committee, any questions or discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride. Livingston. Joe Walker.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right.
That concludes my report, unless Ms. Mackey has more to add.
No, sir, you did a great job. Thank you.
And Madam Vice Chair, he was looking for that affirmation, by the way. See it in his eyes. Yes. So our next item on the agenda is item 16. Other items. This is District 5 hospitality tax allocation. Entertain a motion.
I'll move, Mr. Chair.
All right. It's been moved to properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston. Joe Walker.
No.
Paul Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Move for reconsideration.
A second?
Second.
It's moved properly second. Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Malinowski.
No.
Pugh.
No.
McBride.
No.
Livingston.
No.
Joe Walker.
No.
Paul Walker.
No.
Mackey.
No.
English.
No.
Motion fails.
Next item on the agenda is item 17, which is executive session. And according to the county attorney, we have no items for executive session this evening. Next item on the agenda is item 18, motion period. There being none. And item 19, adjournment.
We'll move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Moving properly second. That's non-debatable. Madam Clerk, take the vote, please.
Malinowski.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Livingston. Joe Walker.
Yes.
Paul Walker.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
We are adjourned.
Thank you, sir.